I don't know if it's a baseball or a football injury. I'm currently play football, so I guess it's on a football player, so it's a football injury at this point. But I'm not really too worried about what it's called or whether it's abnormal or not or whatever. I'm worried about here today. How did I feel? Let's continue to progress and get better.
I was to Matthew Stafford's left, Matthew Berry, and I can tell you he was more irritated by the questions about his elbow injury than he seems to be irritated by the actual injury itself. Nonetheless, it's a huge question. Here to help us answer this question is Mike Ryan, who brings 30 years of athletic training experience in the NFL to the show and to the program. Appreciate you joining us, Mike. What are your thoughts on both this particular injury to Matthew Stafford and the Rams' management of said injury, along with Stafford's availability and productivity for the upcoming season?
Well, great questions, Michael. I think what he's dealing with here is a chronic tendon issue, tendonitis of the elbow. And interesting, with this kind of an injury, that's where they're going back and forth. Is it kind of a baseball injury? He's had this issue in the past. In a sense, it's been an issue. Sean McVay mentioned they've had elbow issues off and on. And I think because of this, an elbow issue, mostly a chronic tendonitis. Ironically, those elbow ligaments at the tendons, at the elbow, affect more the hand than they do the elbow itself. So early in the offseason, they did a PRP injection, which is kind of like a healing espresso shot, if you will, right into the injury itself. And I think that showed both the level of concern that the Rams have, but also smart nature in the sense they're focusing on September, getting them ready. They're not focusing on the July. So I think this issue that he has is something that may linger for a while. Do I really have concerns he'll be behind center week one? Absolutely not. But this is something he's going to have to manage as they're doing in this whole offseason with not a lot of throwing and getting him ready for September, and something that he probably will deal with most of the season.
Well, Mike, if you have no concerns, then we have no concerns. That's a huge sigh of relief to fantasy managers that we expect Stafford to be under center week one for the Rams, right here, by the way, on NBC.
Absolutely.
Of course, a company man. Look, Mike, I'm curious about Joe Burrow. Returned to practice on Sunday, the first time since he had that appendectomy. Any concerns about Burrow moving forward, who I understand from Chris Sims is a better quarterback than Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers combined?
It seems that way, and obviously Chris loves him for good reason. I think the thing with this, Matthew, is the fact that, yes, in a little less than 3 weeks, he was back in the field throwing a little bit on Sunday. You know, a lot of people say this isn't a big deal, and ironically, the people that say that surgeries are not a big deal are the ones on the dull side of the knife, if you will, not on the sharp side. I think the thing here is, with his injury and the surgery itself, the big deal is obviously they open up his abdomen. Anytime you put tools and sutures and cameras into an abdomen, it's a big deal. If we look at week one, that's a little short of 7 weeks post-injury. The concern for him isn't necessarily, I think, the injury itself, the appendectomy. It's more from the surgery. So when they do that, his whole digestive system tends to shut down. So the real high priority for him now, get his digestive system up and running, get him back to the fact that he can hydrate well and eat well and really get himself back to training at a high level as a football player. And I look at that for two reasons. Number one, and the obvious, is the performance. He has to be able to fuel himself like a professional athlete to perform that way. But the athletic trainer and physical therapist, and he says he has to be safer from a safety perspective. And what I mean by that is if he doesn't have the muscle mass on him, if he doesn't have the ability to hydrate himself, we look at week one. That's in Pittsburgh at a 1 o'clock game. So he has to get himself ready. Probably won't see him taking any snaps in the preseason. So his kind of welcome back, so to speak, will be from the Pittsburgh defense at a 1 o'clock game where he's going to have 4 hot quarters to play. So the big question here is, can his entire body be ready to play football come September 11th? Again, a little under 7 weeks post-surgery. I think that's a big question that everyone, obviously Bengal fans included, really have to see that answer. We probably won't know that till 3:30 on September 11th.
By the way, Chris Sims just texted me and told me that he has the answer and that Joe Burrow is going to walk on the 3 rivers to the stadium. He'll be just fine. Don't you worry about it. He doesn't need food because he's not an actual mortal human being. Anyway, that's per Chris Sims, just FYI.
Hey,
here.
Hey, Mike, if I were so fortunate as to have a top 2 or 3 pick in a snake draft, in a redraft, I got to admit that I'd be cautious about drafting Christian McCaffrey, simply put, because I think he's injury prone. Is that fair?
Well, he has a list. Let's put it this way, a backup to that answer. He's had a list of injuries. As you saw, he had the ankle injury last year. He had the hamstring before that. He went on IR twice. I think he played a grand total of 7 games last season. In 2020, where he had an high ankle sprain, shoulder, quad, had a lot of things going on, only played 3 games. So he's only played 10 games in the last 2 seasons. So from a list of injuries, yes, he's prone to it. I thought it was really interesting. Head coach Rule said on Friday, he said, well, we're going to be smart with him. But then in the same press conference, he said, hey, he plays in a high-risk position, and we're just going to put him out there and play. So you're taking a guy who has some bumps and bruises. I think all those injuries he's had were very legitimate for the kind of play that Christian plays and the way he plays. So I don't necessarily say he's injury-prone, but has his risk of injury and potential downtime increased? Absolutely. Because of those injuries, especially with an ankle injury, I think that comes into play. He's had ankle injuries the last 2 seasons. So I think there is a big concern for him, not necessarily starting early in the season, but what's his productivity and can he stay on the field come especially that second half of the season. So I have my concerns as well.
Yeah, certainly. And I think fantasy managers certainly, they're well aware. If you're drafting Christian McCaffrey, the ultimate risk-reward pick, he's missed much of the last 2 games, but when he's been out there, he's been nothing short of amazing. And when he's out there this year, we expect him once again to be incredible. Just sort of for fantasy managers, how lucky do you feel? How lucky do you feel? And I have that question about Michael Thomas. You know, in some ways very similar to Christian McCaffrey in this sense, that for a number of years, Christian McCaffrey was fantasy royalty. And then the last 2 years, there's been questions about that because, and only because of the health. Michael Thomas the same way. For years, fantasy royalty, often the number 1 or number 2 wide receiver in fantasy that was drafted. And then the last 2 years, it's just, you know, health, and there's also feels like some bad vibes coming out of New Orleans. But early reports in camp are good. Should we trust those, Mike?
Well, I think he set the stage real well for that, Matthew, because if you look at his injuries, what he has, his issue is an ankle. You know, it's not multiple injuries, it's an ankle, but it's a bad one. You go back to week 1 in 2020 when Latavius Murray ran up on the back of his ankle. That's a classic look for a high ankle sprain. Ankle is pinned to the ground, high rotation, and that's a great way to disrupt the whole lower part of that shin. So it was a legitimate injury. 2020 only played 7 games because of that. And then I thought it was very interesting that they got till in June of 2021 before he had a surgery on that ankle. So it's something that maybe in hindsight it should have been done early, but the bottom line is it was done in June of 2021, and he missed the entire season last year. So I feel bad for Michael because this has been a really hard couple of years of coming out very high play, like you said, Matthew, of him really struggling. I think when you get multiple high ankle sprains, he's re-injured that ankle as well. When you get that, what you tend to get with is you tend to get some chronic instability of the ankle. And that's a real concern. And you get an ankle instability, it's like out trying to play basketball with no shoelaces in one shoe. That ankle has some extra play. It makes it very difficult for a skilled player, especially someone like Michael Thomas, who changes direction so hard and so well. Suddenly it's a way of really hampering the way his ability to play. And I think another indicator of the confidence that the Saints have or lack thereof is he started the season on PUP. And to be on the physically unable to perform list means obviously you're not able to do what you need to do, but it's also very indicative that he did not take a single rep with the team drills during the offseason. And I think that says something because with this kind of an injury, especially with being over a couple years now, the repetitions that he has to do and his ability to do that consistently, it doesn't take an x-ray or a fancy treatment. It takes repetition of a skilled player to do what he does at full speed to gain that kind of confidence. So he didn't get team reps during the offseason. He starts the season, the training camp on PUP. Now he's out there practicing a little bit. So I could see him with that ankle being on the field at the start of the season. But will he actually, I'll show you an ankle model with that. But the question with him is, will that ankle hold up for a long period of time? And the performance, how much has he stepped back, so to speak, because of that injury? When you look at a high ankle sprain, it's disrupting the membrane that goes between the 2 bones of the shin itself. So now instead of just being a quote-unquote lateral ankle sprain that we all get here and there, now the whole stability of the lower shin becomes compromised. So that's why it makes it so difficult for a skilled player with a high ankle sprain to come back and to play at a very high level.
Well, look, one of the things I would say is that hopefully the additions that the Saints have made maybe eases that off a little bit, right? So, I mean, they drafted Chris Olave. They added Jarvis Landry in the offseason as well. They have high expectations for Adam Trautman at tight end. Looks like Alvin Kamara will be around for the full season, at least at the moment. And so hopefully maybe slightly less usage on him will preserve him. It is worth noting, the last time he had a full season, he set the NFL record for most receptions in an NFL season. And I think the concern with Thomas is baked into his ADP. He's currently going as wide receiver 29 on Yahoo, around the 8th or 9th round. And at that price point, I'm in. I'm in on Michael Thomas because we know what the upside is, and the cost isn't that, isn't terrible. Again, he's going as a low-end wide receiver 3 because the upside is so great. To me, that's an encouraging report from you, Mike. So I'm excited about Thomas.
I think also indications in this, Matthew, to your point, is he's a really hard worker. He's put a lot of effort into it. So to get over this injury, especially being a chronic in nature, the work ethics and the time you have to put into it, he's paying that price and he's putting that effort in. I think that's obviously kind of an up arrow, if you will, of him when he gets on the field to be able to stay on the field.
NBC Sports medicine analyst Mike Ryan, already in regular season form. We look forward to talking to you throughout the year, my friend. Thank you so much.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.